afternoon and welcome to Politics and the Pulpit here on your hometown station, KHTS, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. Good to be back today. I am your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, Pastor Jerry Cook, the pastor of the Freedom's Way Baptist Church for the last 22 years here in this wonderful valley. I believe we got a phone call coming in there, Jerry. I want to just quickly at the top of the hour here give you a couple of things to do in Santa Clarita. How many of you knew that there's a concert band in Santa Clarita? Well, if you didn't, I want to tell you a little bit about them. On May 4th at 7 p.m. at the Canyon Theater Guild, you can see and hear the Santa Clarita Valley Concert Band as they present A Starry Night. And you can get tickets through the Canyon Theater Guild box office. I believe it's $12 for adults, and it goes down from there depending on kids and seniors and things of that nature. And also, just to also promote something that's happening here through KHTS, the 13th Annual Home and Garden Show with gates opening up this weekend at 10 a.m. Saturday and 10 a.m. on Sunday. That is going to be at Central Park. There'll be, dozens and dozens and dozens of vendors, and encourage you to come on out. I think the weather's going to be great out here in Southern California, so please avail yourself of a beautiful Southern California weekend and check out some of the vendors and some of the politics that are there as well. I believe that Moms for Liberty will be there, and so the left has lost their entire mind over that issue. But hey, we still believe in the First Amendment around here, and so hopefully there'll be no issues. But come on out and enjoy the 13th Annual Home and Garden Show this weekend at Central Park. All right, well, we're excited for the debut of our guest today, Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, this afternoon here on Politics in the Pulpit. Jennifer is an opinion writer and a journalist at Red State, and I've read that she's also a yoga instructor at As the Girl Turns. Jennifer currently resides in the great state of Alabama, where she's calling in today, and we're glad to have you on Politics and the Pulpit. Good afternoon, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Pastor Jerry. How you doing?
I am doing well. How's the weather in Alabama? What part of Alabama are we in?
I am in northern Alabama by the Tennessee River, and it's quite a beautiful day. Little humidity, about 70-some-odd degrees, and stillness, no breeze, so it's looking good.
Is humidity a factor in that part of Alabama?
It is, not as much as it is in the central and southern parts, but yeah, during the summertime it gets pretty toasty.
I've driven through Alabama many times, never really stopped through for anything, but I've got a friend that just moved into Alabama a couple weeks ago and really, really enjoys the state. So, Jennifer, we're glad to have you on today, and I just wanted to lead off quickly. I know this, we didn't talk about this the other night, but with last night's Pennsylvania primary results, I'm sure you probably realized that there were two guys running against each other, some guy named Trump and some guy named Biden. And
right.
I looked at some of the numbers, and I was just wondering if you had a chance to look at the numbers of the primary results last night.
I did not. I'm kind of doing a deep dive into the underbelly of California politics. So
you mean where I reside?
Yes, where you reside.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jennifer, that's going to be one deep dive, and hopefully you got enough oxygen to stay under.
I'm trying. I'm doing my best.
Well, let's talk about your Monday drop here for Red State. I'm going to go ahead and read the top line. California Progressive Ro Khanna, who, of course, is you and I would agree is a more reasonable progressive, says he plans to table any vote to remove Republican Mike Johnson as House Speaker. It seems like odd bedfellows, Ro Khanna and Republican Mike Johnson, but tell me a little bit about what is the sum and substance of your piece here, Jennifer?
It's basically, for those who have not been paying attention, Mike Johnson engineered the passage of a $95 billion, mostly Ukraine bailout deal, sending them weapons and other things in lieu of sending over troops or trying to prevent sending over troops. And most of his Republican caucus were quite up in arms about it. The other half went along with him, as well as Democrats who were very on board with wanting Ukraine to be funded. They were quite happy and waving Ukrainian flags and all of that stuff. And so you have three conservative, far-right Congress people who are saying they're about to revoke Speaker Johnson. They want to vacate. They want him to resign, or they're going to vote to have him vacate his seat.
And we're talking about Thomas Massie. We're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Right, and Paul Gosar of Arizona.
Gotcha.
They are on board with we are going to vote and rally to have his position vacated. Of course, in order for that to happen, even the motion having to happen, they have to have a majority of the entire Congress, Democrat and Republican, who want this to go forward. And so Ro Khanna has basically said, I don't necessarily agree with Speaker Johnson on most everything, but I don't think he should be removed. I think he should stay his full term, and I'm going to vote against a motion coming forward if it bothers to come forward. This is the big question. It's like there's a lot of smoke and blowhardedness going on over in Marjorie Taylor Greene's and Massey's corner, but they aren't necessarily doing anything.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
Who knows if this is just more theater, which it probably is.
I know we talked Monday about this a little bit, and I was just listening to a little bit of Dan Bongino coming into the station this morning, and we talked about this Monday on the phone, but do you really think that Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, and Paul Gosar are really going to try to actually vacate the seat? Because, as Dan would say, and others would say, by the way, is, our eye needs to be on the prize, which, of course, is November and getting the president elected, President Donald J. Trump, and then, of course, expanding our majority in the House and, retaking the Senate. Do you think these three are being very short-sighted when it comes to keeping our eye on the objective in November?
These three, hopefully this is not an unradio-friendly word, those three are just attention whores.
No, you're good there. You're good there.
Yeah, okay. I do not think that they are going to do anything. I think they're just getting a lot of press and a lot of fundraising dollars by saying that, we're against this and we're the only principled members of Congress. And Massey put out some tweet saying, we just need to clean house. And it's like, how long have you been in Congress, Thomas? And couldn't you have done some cleanup before then?
Well, we are speaking with Jennifer Oliver O'Connell with Red State, and again, it's her first time with us today, and hopefully it won't be her last. We'd love to have her on every once in a while to talk about some of the current political situations of our day, which change literally second by second. And I will say this, pastoring a church here in California and having a congregation that has some very, very strong opinions, Jennifer, I can tell you that there are some within my congregation, which I believe is a reflection of some of the sentiment out there on the Republican side. I have some people that are just done with Ukraine funding and are just done with some of that. I know that is a part of the Republican Party right now, that there's a faction of that is growing. But what are your thoughts, Jennifer, going forward? Do you think, and it doesn't matter, there's no right or wrong answer here, Jen. I just want to know, what are your thoughts about the Ukrainian funding, and do you think maybe we should stop sending them blank checks?
I would like us to stop sending them blank checks because, if you kind of look at the history, I think there's a couple of people that even have documentaries going out. It's just a gigantic money laundering scheme. So, yeah, it would be nice to not have our taxpayer dollars going to fund that, particularly since we do have a border crisis. We do have people living on the street practically, some willfully, some not. Inflation, there's just so much going on the home front, and that billions of dollars have been funneled to a foreign country, and yet nothing is being done for the home front. To me, that's the unconscionable part. If we were, flush with money and our people were being taken care of, it would be one thing. But the fact that we have all of these issues going on, and it appears that Congress is doing nothing to pay attention to it and worried about Ukraine, that's a problem.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jennifer, because I just heard President Biden to say this morning that he cut the deficit in half.
Yeah, and he also talks to Corn Pop, and his uncle got eaten by cannibals or something. Like that.
Yeah. Uncle Rosie. But
Yeah.
it is amazing. It's funny because I have three kids, Jennifer, and my 12-year-old Derek. He sometimes will watch some news clips with me. I actually don't have cable. I just watch Fox clips or CNN clips on YouTube, and we'll watch something and we'll listen to the president or the gentleman that's currently residing in the Oval Office, and my 12-year-old son will laugh and say, "What did he say, Dad?" I says, "I don't know. I have no idea what he says." Hey, let's turn our attention, if you would, Jennifer, to the Hamas-paid protesters on college campuses that are ironically only in blue states or in blue cities. So what do you think's going on there with these Hamas-paid protesters, and do you think this is a little bit of a foretaste or a throwback to the summer of 2020 and the summer of love with the BLM protesters?
Oh, I'll even go back as far as I think it was 2006, 7, 8, something like that. Occupy Wall Street.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember that?
I totally forgot about that. Thanks for bringing that back to my memory.
Yeah, they set up encampments, and there's all types of garbage that went on with that. Paid AstroTurf is basically what it is by the Soros bunch and whoever else wishes to keep unrest going in certain sectors. And my take is let them eat each other alive. I mean, and I know that's bad, but it's like, it's not my college. I didn't go there, so.
I don't know if you saw the clip making the rounds of the Hamas protester harassing Alec Baldwin in a Starbucks.
Yeah.
And, the Hamas protester looks at Alec and says, "Hey, listen, just say, free Palestine one time, I'll stop bugging you, And you can tell that Alec Baldwin and the liberalism that he's used to is not used to this radicalism that's happening in front of his face.
No, and he's not. He foments it. He claims that he supports it, but when actually confronted by it, and actually being the victim of it, he didn't much appreciate it.
Yeah, well, no pun intended. I think his career is kind of rusted over, so we'll just leave that right there. Let's talk a little bit about the hush money trial, if you want to, for a minute here. Obviously, this is they've already chosen all the jurists. How fair and how honest do you think this trial is going to be, Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, going forward, as this is happening in a blue state, in one of the bluest districts of the state, with a judge that is completely unhinged, and with jurists that probably, down deep in their heart, probably want to kill the president. I'm just kind of saying that flippantly. Maybe they don't, but
right.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, I think that they are setting up for an appeal. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
You have a judge who is thoroughly biased. I mean, most legal scholars and people that I bother to listen to, including Alan Dershowitz, are all saying that this is going way beyond the bounds of decency and way beyond the bounds of law, frankly. That they are literally setting it up so that he can appeal easily and get it overturned should the jury decide to rule against him. And who knows? Maybe his lawyers are persuasive enough to change hearts and minds. I mean, apparently everyone has said it's a weak case to begin with, as well as it sets up for, again, kind of like the classified documents case, it's setting it up for you're breaking precedent. And if you're going to break a precedent of, well, you can't use an NDA for this, then how many rich men and rich people are going to be way in trouble down the line should they rule against Trump?
Yeah. I will say this. Again, we're speaking to Jennifer Oliver O'Connell with Red State. I will say this. I think the one Trump card, pardon the pun, that the journalists are paying right now, the legacy media is playing right now, is they like to say, okay, so Trump is ahead in most of these swing states, and yeah, he's ahead in the aggregate by less than a percentage, I think, in terms of the popular vote. But they like to say, but if the president were to get indicted, and there was actually a charge, a large portion of independents and some Republicans just would not stomach to vote for him. And I think they're really throwing that out there every time they get a chance, just to get guys like you and I worried about whether or not November is actually going to happen.
Yeah, I call BS on that, just because the more they come up with these indictments and charges, and I mean the concept of, he can't go to Barron's graduation because of this evil judge. People are going to continue to cheer him on. They're turning him into a folk hero, basically.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
That they are turning him into a folk hero the more they do this. I don't know if that was their intent or what, but that's what's happening. So I have serious doubts that, should he be indicted on anything, that people won't still vote for him.
Absolutely, I agree with you. We've got about 2 minutes left here. I know that time flies when you're having fun, Jennifer, but
yes.
Quick predictions for November 5th. What does Jennifer Oliver O'Connell think is going to happen on the evening of November 5th, 2024?
Barring some major shenanigans or major cheating, I think Trump is going to end up winning the presidency.
And do you want to take a guess as to what the electoral count might be, and whether or not he might actually win the popular vote?
I would say it's definitely going to be more than 270, maybe 280 some odd, just to be conservative. So he'll get 280 of the electoral vote, and Biden will get the rest. Popular vote?
Yeah, what do you think?
That's still a hard sell. He is still an unpopular figure in so many factions, but again, we've had so much stuff that we've had an entire year of them saying, "Oh, he's dead. Oh, they're going to get him. Oh, they're going to." I mean, anything's possible.
I get it. Well, please read some of Jennifer Oliver O'Connell's articles on Red State. You can also check her out also on 1819 News. And we're looking forward to having you back on for more pithy and insightful conversations, Jennifer. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You have a great day.
All right. When we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit, Pastor Cook is going to answer some of his critics that like to be keyboard warriors when we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. All right, we're back here live on Politics in the Pulpit. Thanks for joining us today. I am your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita. Thanks so much to Jennifer Oliver O'Connell with Red State. I think she's going to agree to come back on next month, and maybe we'll try to make it a routine thing. Appreciate people like her that have a good head on their shoulders and are able to provide us really good content when it comes to the conservative perspective. Real quickly, before we get into this next segment, again, just want to give a couple of shameless plugs to the Santa Clarita Valley Concert Band. On May 4th at 7 p.m., they will be playing and presenting A Starry Night at the Canyon Theater Guild. And again, tickets are available through the Canyon Theater Guild box office. And then, of course, this weekend at Central Park is the KHTS 13th Annual Home and Garden Show, with gates opening on Saturday and Sunday, respectively, at 10 a.m. Come by and say hello to the Moms of Liberty and other conservative booths, and even say hi to the Democrats as well. We love them all. We believe in American values around here. Well, during this second to the last segment, I want to kind of answer some of the critics that sometimes will be keyboard warriors when KHTS will put a promo for Politics in the Pulpit where my wonderful good-looking kisser is up there, either on Facebook or on Instagram, or perhaps maybe my own Facebook site. And it's amazing, some of these guys. They show a lot of their ignorance and just how far their education goes by some of the comments they make. First and foremost, hopefully people know that I'm actually sitting in a studio in downtown Newhall, and I'm not actually doing this broadcast from the platform of the Freedom's Way Baptist Church. However, I am speaking as not only as the capacity of the pastor, which means that's my profession, my vocation, but also as a patriot and a freedom-loving American. And so every once in a while, we'll see these interesting comments that are made on in the thread. And if, in case you're wondering, if you comment on my thread, you might find that your comment has been deleted, and you're saying, well, why did that happen? Because your freedom of speech begins and ends on my thread, because I've got something called delete, and it's so much fun. But last week, I had a few people comment on the fact that we had a Armenian Christian here that was representing the medicinal world, talking about medication and different health means of trying to take care of your body without putting a bunch of pharmaceuticals into it. And some person commented on the thread about, why do you always have Christians on your show? And I think it's important for me to just reinforce the fact that I don't always have Christians on the show. Now, it's my prerogative to have Christians on the show. Why? Because this is a paid-for broadcast, and because it's a paid-for broadcast, I can have who I stinking want on the show. However, about 3 weeks ago, I did have a gentleman by the name of Steve Hill, who ran as a Democrat, who calls himself a humanist, atheist, Satanist. And some of you out there in La La Land, that means AKA liberals and progressives, you might know who Steve Hill is. He resides up in the AV, and I'll just let you know, all of our shows are archived here at Hometown Station. If you want to go back to 3 weeks ago and listen to the conversation that me and Steve Hill had, you will find that for the entire hour, we had a civil conversation the entire show. In fact, since then, he and I have discoursed via text and on the phone and have had no issues. Now, of course, we completely disagree with each other. He thinks that everything I believe is ludicrous, and I think that everything he doesn't believe is ludicrous. But we have a civil discussion, and I'm going to have Steve Hill back on again, and I think we would have a good discussion. If we go back maybe a year ago, I had a gentleman by the name of David Barlavi on this show. David Barlavi ran unsuccessfully for city council here in Santa Clarita, and he's also, I believe, a tax professional and has some sort of firm here in Santa Clarita. And by the way, Barlavi is also a progressive and an atheist, and might I also add, a cigar lover. But David Barlavi and I had a great civil conversation while he was here on the show. I think he was on for the entire hour. I've had him at my church, where I had him talk a little bit about his run for city council. Now, he knew, and I knew, that nobody in my congregation was going to vote for him. But out of respect and deference for David, and for the opportunity for my folks to hear both sides, we had David there. And David and I still have a relatively decent relationship on Facebook and that kind of thing. Listen, we do share a common humanity, right? I mean, we may not agree with each other that the Bible is the infallible, inspired Word of God, and that God created the world and there's an intelligent designer and all that kind of stuff. We don't have to agree on that to actually have a civil discussion. But then there are people that get on their keyboards and say things like this. This preacher's podcast, which technically it's not, this preacher's podcast should be canceled. He is violating our Constitution. Where exactly in the Constitution, which phrase am I violating? So a preacher can't have a podcast or can't be live on radio? What country are you living in? This preacher's, quote, podcast should be canceled. He is violating our Constitution. I can almost promise you that the person who took to the keyboard to put that down probably couldn't quote a third of our Constitution. And then, of course, they all like to say this. This is like one of the favorite regurgitated mantras from the left here. Separation of church and state. Oh, yes. I love dealing with this, and I really want to save a lot of separation of church and state for a future show. In fact, our very first show that we had here on Politics in the Pulpit a couple of years ago, that first show I led off with separation of church and state, just to explain to people what they think or what they don't think that means. But I have in my hands something called the First Amendment. And let me go ahead and read, if I may, the First Amendment. It says, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Now, that First Amendment says a whole lot, but it's only the first part of it that I really want to comment on briefly, where it says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, I think it's important for our liberal, leftist, progressive friends to know that the term or the words separation of church and state do not appear in the U.S. Constitution or, in fact, in any of our founding documents. The only leap of logic we could make is, of course, this First Amendment here, or if you will, the Establishment Clause. Now, what exactly is this Establishment Clause actually establishing? Well, it prohibits the federal government from creating an official religion or favoring one religion or non-religion for that matter over another. Now, that's important, and that's a really important thing that the founders and the framers put into that First Amendment, because remember, the Puritans and the Pilgrims fled New England precisely because of a church-state setup. Remember, the King of England is also not just the king of government, but he's also the king of the church. He's the titular head, if you will, on earth. Their version, the Anglicans' version of the Pope, right? There in England. And so there was a church-state combination going on in England, and the Puritans and the Pilgrims left. And they wanted to make sure that when they came to the New World and they set up a brand new government, that they would not fall into the same rut that they came out of. So they made sure that there was no federal establishment of religion. Now, if we look at the 13 colonies, you can see that you can see a little bit of federalism in action. That is states' rights, right? That's what we're kind of talking about right now with the whole abortion debate is, this state can go ahead and say, yeah, you can murder your unborn children. And then this state says, no, you can't murder your unborn children. That's federalism. Those are states' rights. And so if you notice in the 13 colonies, they kind of had state-recognized religion, not federal, but state-recognized religion. If you kind of go down through them, Pennsylvania was basically a Quaker state, the Quakers, if you will. Rhode Island was a Baptist state. Roger Williams was the founder of the state of Rhode Island, and in fact, Rhode Island was called the Little Baptist State. And then you've got Maryland. I'll just give you one guess. Maryland? Yeah, Roman Catholicism was preeminent there in that state, and still is to this day. And so there was state-recognized religion, but what the First Amendment prohibits is for the federal government to recognize one particular state religion over another, and prohibiting them from actually creating an official religion. In other words, as a pastor, I do not want the Baptist denomination, if you will, for lack of a better term, to be over the United States. I don't want the Catholicism, I don't want Lutheranism, I don't want Methodism over the United States of America. However, that doesn't mean that our founders nor our framers disregarded the laws and the precepts of the Bible, which is why you see all of that stuff all over Washington, D.C., on some of the statues and some of the places in the courthouse, within the halls of Congress and other places. You'll see it either in Latin or in English, various phrases taken from the Old Testament, from the New Testament, or founders' quotes that have religion basically all through it. Why? Because the majority of the early founders were Christians. The majority of them. Yeah, there were some deists. I can already hear some of you yelling, going, they were deists. Not all of them, but there were some. And when it comes to this phrase, separation of church and state, that phrase was actually something that came from a letter written by Thomas Jefferson to the Danbury Baptists. Now, why is that important? Because the Danbury Baptists were concerned about their status as a religious minority in Connecticut. The Baptist community then penned a letter to President Thomas Jefferson expressing fear about religious persecution because they were in the, quote, religious minority. Jefferson responded with a letter to the Danbury Baptists emphasizing that the First Amendment's free exercise and establishment clauses together built a, quote, wall of separation between church and state. And so there you go. What was he saying? He was saying that state would not intrude in the church, and that there would be no official state-recognized church for the entire United States of America. And that is exactly what I advocate for, because I am an American, and I'm a Christian who lives in America. I don't want the Pope over the United States of America. I don't want some Baptist preacher as head over the United States of America. I want the president. But I want that president and all of our elected officials to be subject to the God of heaven and the laws and the principles that God of heaven has given us. And I think all of us are subject to those laws and precepts, even in our individual private lives. And so you folks out there that waste your breath and that basically have no jobs and, you're paid agitators or what have you, that, get on your keyboards and, wipe all the wetness off it and then go ahead and start writing your stuff. I don't think you know what you're talking about. And so, folks, just calm down out there. When we come back on Politics in the Pulpit, we're going to talk about Jesus Christ and some of the insulting things that he said when we come back here on your hometown station. All right, we're back here for our final segment on Politics and the Pulpit. My son thinks I speak way too loud on this radio. If I do, then just kind of turn down the volume out, folks. I am a Baptist preacher, so I have a naturally loud, booming, carrying voice. Real quick plug again for the Santa Clarita Valley Concert Band presents a Starry Night at the Canyon Theater Guild on Saturday, May 4th at 7 p.m. That's just a very short couple weeks away, folks. And then tickets are available for that event through Canyon Theater Guild box office. Also this weekend, KHTS presents the 13th annual Home and Garden Show with gates opening respectively on Saturday and Sunday at 10 a.m. Come on by and support your local vendors. If you're one of those vendors, thank you very much for taking part in that. You're going to make somebody's life really happy when you sell them something. During this final segment, I wanted to just talk a little bit about basically making Jesus Christ into something that he is not. One of the things that I've advocated for as a pastor is just let the Bible breathe on its own. There's really no reason to look at the Bible through a particular lens. Just let it breathe on its own. And one of the things that Christians have disagreed on, and unfortunately this disagreement even exists, is just on the character and nature of Jesus Christ himself. There are some within biblical Christianity, or shall I just say Christianity, that just thinks that Jesus is this nice Birkenstock, flower-waving kind of guy that's kind of akin to some hippie that you might have seen in the late 1960s, singing, if you're going to San Francisco, make sure to wear a flower in your hair kind of stuff. But that's not the Jesus that is presented in the four Gospels. That is definitely not the Jesus that was prophesied in the Old Testament, and definitely not the life of Jesus as we read in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I have in my hand an article written just a couple days ago by a gentleman that I do not know. His name is Levi Secord, and he pastors Christ Bible Church somewhere here in the United States of America. And a buddy of mine posted this, and I actually really appreciate this article because I did a small sermon on this type of topic a few months ago for our church about using abrasive and curt language in order to get your point across. And there are definitely examples of prophets in the Old Testament and even Jesus Christ himself using very curt, abrasive, and rather insulting language in order to get a point across. And unfortunately, we live in a day where Jesus Christ has been taken in by the woke evangelicals, and they've made him to be something that he is not. But if you read this article, again, it's called, let's see here, when Jesus insulted people, a comprehensive list. I'm not going to read everything here, but I'm going to give you just a few things. This guy takes all four Gospels and a portion of the book of Revelation, and he just lays out all the places where Jesus used a word or a term or a phrase that was a bit bitey. In Matthew 6, verse 2, he calls the religious crowd hypocrites. In Matthew 6:5, he says the same thing. In Matthew 6:16, he calls them hypocrites. In Matthew 7:6, he calls them dogs. In Matthew 7:6, he calls them swine or pigs. In Matthew 7, he calls them ravenous wolves. In Matthew 7:23, he calls them workers of lawlessness. If you go through in Matthew 16, he calls them a wicked and twisted generation, an adulterous generation. He calls them blind guides, blind fools, blind men. This is all Matthew 23. Hypocrites, blind Pharisee, whitewashed sepulchres, full of dead man's bones. He says, you are a den of snakes. He calls one of the religious leaders of his day and one of the political leaders of his day that old fox. He calls them an evil generation. The lawyers in Luke chapter 11 complain that Jesus is insulting them as well, and he then turns and insults them directly for making things worse and being guilty of all the blood of the prophets. That's in Luke chapter 11, verses 45 through 52. And folks, my point is this, and I want you to just read the article, go to my Facebook, or go to Christ Bible Church, and look for the article that's entitled "When Jesus Insulted People: A Comprehensive List." And don't let the woke evangelicals out there take Jesus and put him in their little woke box and dust off and clean off all the little insulting and negative things that Jesus said to people all through the gospel. The list is comprehensive. It is there from Matthew to John and portions of the book of Revelation, and you can read that for yourself. Well, listen, it was great to be back with you today on Politics in the Pulpit again. Looking forward to being back with you next Wednesday. We're going to talk I think to somebody running for Congress, we're trying to get George Whitesides on, running against Congressman Mike Garcia. Hopefully, we might be able to have him on next Wednesday for a segment. So, Lord willing, that happens. But we're definitely going to have a flurry of elected officials coming on here real short. So, again, thank you so much for tuning in on your hometown station. We'll catch you next week.